This is our pregnant pause while everything gets going. Oh, hi, everybody. Thanks for coming out on this snowy evening. I'm going to call this meeting to order. It is November the 9th, 2022, and this is the meeting of the Carbondale, Colorado Parks and Recreation Commission. We are an advisory commission made up of volunteers to assist and consult with town staff and to make recommendations to our elected town officials. My name is Hollis Sutherland, and I am the chair of the commission this year. I'm joined by fellow volunteers, Vice Chair Rose Rosello, Ashley Haight-Manick, Leslie Keary, Susan Ray, Drew Sorensen, John Williams, Brian Sobey, and Misha Logan. And we're joined by the Carbondale staff, Eric Brenlinger, our Parks and Recreation Director, Margaret Donnelly, our new Community Center and Recreation Programs Manager. Is your title the same? Okay. And our fabulous scribe, Kay McDonald. Luis Yanes is our Board of Trustee liaison, and I'd like to welcome anyone who may be watching live or via recording. Thank you for participating in your local government. As a commission, we strive to serve the town of Carbondale by setting aside personal biases and looking at what's best for our community. We honor diverse opinions, promote inclusivity, and endeavor to keep our discourse civil and respectful. So with that, let's get started with reviewing and approving the minutes. Has everybody had a chance to look at the minutes? Any changes, edits, corrections? Okay, is there a motion to approve the minutes?
I move we approve the minutes.
A second.
Okay, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, very good. We are one member short tonight with John not being here, a regular voting member. And since Misha's here in person, would you like to vote for us tonight?
Sure.
Misha? Okay, great. So there we go. And we're going to start with, well, citizens present, not on the agenda. I guess that would be you, Jared. I'd like to introduce Jared Barnes and have him introduce himself.
Yeah, so just want to say hello. I'm Jared Barnes. I'm the new planning director for the town of Carbondale. So I'm taking over for Janet Buck. I don't know how much you guys had worked with Janet or John Laybourne in the past, but I'm kind of filling their role. And so I work with Eric, and I want to stop by and say hello to you all, and also just kind of listen to the conversation about the rec center master plan that you guys are having this evening. So yeah, hello. Happy to answer any questions you guys might have, but I know you have a full agenda, so I can also let you get on with your guys' meeting as well.
Yeah, well, thanks for coming. If you want to sit up there next to Colton and participate, you're more than welcome.
I'll jump over there if I have anything to add.
Nice to meet you. Welcome to the team.
Thank you so much.
Great. And thanks so much for coming tonight. Colton. Hi.
Hi.
So we have a brand new, let's see, your title now is Aquatics Facility Manager and Health and Wellness Coordinator. And you took over Margaret's
Correct, yeah.
job when Margaret took over Jesse's job.
Yeah,
So welcome.
thank you.
So tell us a little about yourself.
Well, I'm extremely ecstatic to be part of the team, and thank you very much for the opportunity. And I moved here a couple years ago from Phoenix, Arizona, after over a decade of saving up to move here, and finally made the plunge. And we're super excited to be here. And I've always been drawn to not only Valley, but Carbondale itself, just the town itself and what we wanted to live in. And I was hoping to be able to be part of the town at some point. I wasn't expecting to have an opportunity so early in moving here. And I used to own an athletic training facility / rec center in Phoenix. And so yeah, when the opportunity presented itself and meeting with Eric and Lauren, I was pretty excited that be a part of the team. Yeah.
Did you sell your, I'm Rose.
Yeah.
Did you sell your rec center, or is that something that you also own?
No, yeah, to move here. Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
And you've been a CEO of another company that you started as well, right?
I have a mortgage company as well. Yeah. Financing piece of it.
Quite the go-getter. You've hired Eric. Nice work.
I'm a
You
sucker
continue
for
with-
suffering. Let's put it that way.
So you continue with that, right? The financing,
I have the financing company. Yes, yes,
in addition to having this job.
correct. Yeah. I have,
So you're gonna give us a really, really cheap loan for our pool?
there's no, yeah, commercial financing.
Huh.
Yeah, I have a whole staff who pretty much handles everything, so I can be full force with this.
great.
And local government and government itself is very intriguing to me, so learning as much about it as I'm looking forward to.
Great. Well,
Yeah.
welcome.
Thank you.
And thanks for coming in tonight. And you are welcome to stay as long as you want,
Yeah.
especially this is a big conversation that we're going to have with Stephanie.
Okay, yeah,
So I guess we can roll right into that, right? Stephanie, thank you for coming tonight on such a cold and snowy evening. Stephanie Ganashi? Gianeschi, sorry. Is with us from the Aspen Community Foundation and was one of the people that Eric and I met with this summer to get a little bit of idea if we could all work together. So would you like to join us? And I guess probably at this. Yeah, we can do that for sure. So we did send you a summary of a lot of our discussions that we've had and questions that, and if you watched any of the recordings, you could see me going, I have no idea. So we have to get somebody here. So I'm just going to let you go for it, Stephanie. And, I think some of what what we batted around in conversations and had questions about. And I'm sure there's going to be more questions that'll come up as the discussion comes on. So thank you for
Great,
coming.
thanks for having me. I'm Stephanie Gianeschi from the Aspen Community Foundation. I'm the Director of Philanthropic Services, and I've been there for almost 5 years. And I help donors and organizations setting up funds. And then I also help with donor advisors and their granting of funds to nonprofits, among other things. But that's why I met with Eric and Hollis, because they came to me talking about how you would like to fundraise and set up a fund to hold the monies that you raise for the pool project. Is that about right? Okay. So do you want me to just go down the questions? Is that good? Or
Yeah, sure.
okay. So ACF, you may or may not know, but we were established in 1980. So we are definitely an established community foundation in the region. We have assets of around 60 million, depending on the the markets at the time. And we hold 179 funds, and those include all of the kinds of funds that are in your packet. You might have seen the sheet that just talks about the different kind of funds that ACF holds. Primarily donor advised funds. So that's when a donor can put money into a fund, get their tax benefit at the time that the money goes in, and then they can grant out. So that's what a lot of our assets sit in. And then we also have organization funds, designated funds, field of interest funds, scholarship funds, and then ACF holds their own unrestricted funds. So that's a little bit about ACF. So ACF is a 501c3, so we're considered a nonprofit, and we have a board of 20 members and a staff of 7. And I already talked about that.
What did you say? A staff of 7 and a board of?
20.
20? And who are those people? Where, who comprises, who's on your, for, not specifically, but what kind of people are on your board?
We're striving to have a representation of the community that we serve from Aspen to Parachute. Right now, we have more people that live in Aspen than other parts of the valley. But we do have people as far as Rifle, I believe, on the board. We just brought on 2 new people. So actually that puts us at 21. So
Are they major donors? Are they heads of some of the organizations, the groups that have funds that you're managing?
no, they are not representative of the nonprofits that we support. So they're donors, they're leaders in the valley. We have someone from Bay Equity. She just joined our board, Susie Mraz. We have Yesenia from CMC. She works from Rifle campus. Grady Langton is a newer person on our board that grew up here, as did Susie, that works in investment and affordable housing. So we also strive to have people on the board that believe in our mission and understand what we're about. And we have a Cradle to Career initiative. So a lot of our focus is around children and families and really helping those from Aspen to Parachute, and knowing that the workforce lives outside of Aspen, and helping those that help Aspen be really who they want to be. So we do a lot in emergency assistance, direct assistance, mental health fund. We grant to a lot of safety net nonprofits like Response and A Way Out, the different childcare centers. So really the people that live and work in the valley.
Thanks.
So you'll see in your packet the different kinds of funds and who they're intended for. So our ACF's suggestion for you is an organization fund, and we because you want to be able to have access to that, we talked about a non-endowed organization fund. If it's endowed, our spending policy is up to 5% per year of the balance. So if you wanted to be able to access those funds, an endowment fund might not be the best choice. So an organization fund is established so that the organization, government entity, there are a variety of exceptions to a nonprofit that can hold an organization fund. And those are churches, educational organizations, hospitals, and medical research organizations, publicly supported organizations benefiting colleges and universities, government units, so if it's for a public purpose, publicly supported charities, private operating foundations, supporting organizations, and agricultural research organizations. So there are some exceptions, and that's how Carbondale Parks and Recreation would be able to have an organization fund if it were to be for a public purpose. So not paying for like staff or, just paying operating expenses or something of that nature. So a non-endowed organization fund is $100,000 to establish the fund. It has a 1% administration fee, and that really is everything that would be needed. So from accepting donations, and that really, I know that came up later, like why a community foundation over a bank. And by us being a nonprofit, when donors are giving to us, to the fund through the community foundation, they get a tax benefit that they wouldn't if they're just putting it into your bank account or writing a check to you. But if they're giving to the community foundation, then they get that tax benefit. And when we receive contributions of any kind to any of our funds, we take care of the tax receipt and the acknowledgement letter. So we keep track of that. Donors can contact us at any time to, a lot of times people come back at tax time and say, what about that donation that I made? So we handle all of that. And for a non-endowed organization fund, also along with that 1% fee, administration fee, that includes any of the withdrawals that you want to make along the way. There are no, like an endowed fund, you can only take one time a year, but in a fund, just a regular organization fund, you can request funds for the benefit of the organization at any time. One thing that we talked about when you were at ACF is that we do not basically write checks or grant to vendors. So if you were in the middle of the project, we wouldn't be the checking account writing a check to, the construction people, architects, that kind of thing. You would request the funds, and then we would write the check to the Carbondale Parks and Rec, and then you could disperse the funds where they needed to go. We're not allowed to make grants to individuals, just as a community foundation. And really getting into vendors is not something that we do. And as an organization fund, it really should go to you, and then you make sure that it gets to where it needs to go. Some of the other organizations that have organization funds, Aspen Junior Hockey, AVSC has 3 different funds: the Buddy Program, Carbondale Clay, Grassroots Asia, Roaring Fork Leadership, Thunder River Theater Company has 2, Treeswater People, Valley View Hospital Foundation, and Youth Zone. We've also worked, especially during COVID, we worked with I believe all 3 of the counties with their CARES Act money. So they gave us the funds, and then we distributed them to nonprofits helping mostly around health and human services during COVID. We have worked with Pitkin County quite a bit, and they have given us funds and then directed those in different ways. Eagle County has also had a fund with us when we were assisting with early childhood, and they wanted to support like the 20% of their population over on this side. So they granted what they were more carefully taking care of on the Vail Valley side. So they wanted a way to support childcare centers in the Roaring Fork Valley. And so they gave us funds and then helped to distribute those here on the Roaring Fork side. So they didn't have to have separate staff or have staff on this side. I know that was a question if we'd ever worked with government before, and that was when I first came on. So that one was pretty significant for a few years with Eagle County. And we did a similar thing with Town of Basalt, smaller scale, with some early childhood tuition assistance. So they gave us the funds, and then we helped distribute those too. So in addition to like all of the fund management and the the investment. We do quarterly statements, the gift processing, the draw requests. There is an online portal, so you would have access to that. You asked if that was the industry standard, the 1%, and it is. We are also part of the Council on Foundations and are accredited by them. And so, I mean, really, that's pretty standard, the 1%. The only other, well, it varies depending on the kind of fund it is, but it really is anywhere from 1% to 3%. Some that are more active, such as the scholarship fund, sometimes the fees are higher. If someone makes a donation to the fund, so all of the funds that come into ACF this is in the fund agreement, do become the property of Aspen Community Foundation. And then you, as the Carbondale Parks and Rec, are basically the advisors and direct us on where you would like those to go. But as an organization fund, it really is spelled out that it goes back to the organization. We keep them separated. The money, if your organization were to put money into the fund, we would keep the accounting separate, your money versus other monies that come in from donors. Because the part that if the Carbondale Parks and Rec were to give money just to hold in that fund, then that counts as an asset on your side for you and not for ACF. So that works a little bit different than some of our other funds, but that's why they're kept separate. But it's still the same. It's just the accounting on our side. When someone makes a donation, they make it out to Aspen Community Foundation with the purpose of whatever you decide to call the fund. So Carbondale Parks and Rec Fund, and donor intent is really an important part of what ACF does. So even any gift that comes in and it's not specified what it's for, we always contact the donor. So there's never any question what the purpose of the gift was. So if it wasn't clear, then we would make sure that we know what it's for. And we always get that in writing as well. So they would write a check to us and then tell us which fund it would go into. And that's how we keep track. And all of the accounting from ACF, like right now, we have 179 funds. So they're pooled in a pooled fund, but the accounting for each one is accounted for accordingly. If someone, I'm just looking through the questions, they would receive the tax receipt. The nonprofit on the tax receipt is ACF's. So yes, like it's tax deductible because it's coming into ACF and we're a 501c3. If someone wanted to make a large donation, do they need to establish a donor advisor? No, anybody can give any amount to any fund at the foundation. How and when does ACF release money to the Parks and Rec? So it's really it's a draw on your fund. So you would request it. And that's how other organization funds, if it's a regular organization fund, they just say, hey, this is the amount that we would like. Usually a board or the chair of the committee has to be on the communication, just so everybody is aware that money is leaving the fund and going to the organization.
How long does it take to get funds?
Within a week. I would say it depends on volume, but first, definitely within a week.
So are the funds invested so that they're at risk? And what kind of risk? And so then that usually plays into when you want to make a withdrawal, there's a sale that has to happen so that cash is raised, right?
It's always available, because there's so much invested, so there's always money available. You would have the choice when you establish the fund if you wanted it to be in a money market, which, as you know, is a very safe investment option, or the pooled investment with the rest of our pooled funds. And in that case, we strive for long-term growth. So usually between up to 5%, but we're looking long-term. So, that could be up to 10 years.
Fundamentally, this would be a fund used to construct a the pool and associated things. So this is not a 20-year fund. This is not anything like that. So I think it would be more short-term in nature. What have been your returns with the pooled investment over the last 3 years for each consecutive year? What have been the returns in those years?
I don't have that with me. I'm sorry.
Do you know last year's
No.
trailing 12 months?
Yeah, she doesn't have that with her, Brian.
It sounds like most of the government relationships have largely been outbound, and for it almost sounded more like distribution, where they worked with you to distribute funds to other entities, and not necessarily I don't know if it's technically accurate, but I'll say not necessarily treasury funds, which is a little bit closer to what we're talking about here, which is that this is a place to put working capital for a project that's in progress. Have you worked with other governmental entities on holding capital for working projects?
Not that I know of.
Okay.
But
From-
similarly, some of the other organization funds that we hold, they are nonprofits, but many times they're holding on to it for different projects or different things that come up where they need that, especially if it's a non-endowed fund.
And Brian, while we're focused on the pool and building the pool too, I have personally, I have a longer term vision too about how we're going to be able to fund things in the future. So it could be a long-term fund that we end up having with them as well. We haven't decided on how that's going to play out. The commission hasn't talked about that. So.
Okay. Well, I guess related to that, it just from, basic Google searching, I'm certainly not an expert here. This would be a question more for the town attorneys, but it appears that government entities themselves are qualify for the tax-free donations under 170C1. And you're talking about your 501c3 as being the vehicle for the tax deductibility element of any donations. Have you worked with other governmental entities that are working with you because they are not otherwise qualified for tax deductible donations? Or are you aware of it being the case that government entities where the funds are used for public purpose are not themselves already qualified to be tax deductible?
Not that I know of. We haven't held a fund for that purpose or heard that someone needed to establish a fund because of the reasons that you just said.
Okay. From what I've seen, the tax deductibility concept would not be a net benefit relative to what the town would already have available to them by virtue of these funds being used for a governmental purpose and a public purpose. One of the big differences though would be kind of where they're held and how they're held in risk, to be honest. And I totally understand what you're saying about money market. but it sounds like there are certain circumstances in which the funds would be pooled as an ACF asset and not necessarily held as a liability on ACF's balance sheet as something owed and owned by the town. What are the circumstances in which something would actually be an ACS asset where the distribution is directed by the town versus an actual town asset held as a liability?
So let me, one of the questions I heard was in certain circumstances, it would be in the pooled funds, and that is not, unless it was specified as in the pooled funds, it would not ever be in the pooled funds. It would be into whatever you chose it to be in, either pooled or money market. So if you specified money market, it would always be in money market. An organization fund is a liability on ACF's books, is not an asset as our other funds are.
Got it. Okay. So what protections would exist with respect to the town's funds in case of bankruptcy, insolvency, or anything like that on behalf of ACF? Just contractual?
Right, in the agreement. I would have to get more, I would have to consult our legal counsel on that. I can't answer that fully, but it is outlined in the agreement, the fund agreement.
Got it. Okay. And so in the event that that the town otherwise qualified for tax deductible donations by virtue of being public interest in a government entity, you mentioned that you had a 1% management fee, and the return rates are TBD on the fund historically. What are the other primary benefits? Distribution seemed like more banking in nature, where the town would put in for distribution, it would come back, the town would distribute it. What are the other key benefits that the town would have for that 1% management fee? And I apologize that this is kind of a restatement of stuff you've already said. It'd be interesting to hear a summary.
Sure, it is keeping track of all of the gifts and contributions, processing contributions, producing receipts and acknowledgements to donors, the online portal, the management of the funds, so the investment of the funds. We do all of that. And I had one more thing. Quarterly statements. So we kind of do all the bookkeeping on it, or we do all the bookkeeping.
Understood. Thank you. And I guess a question for Hollis. I don't know if we have exactly the right folks in the room. I would assume the town has an existing treasury mechanism. And do you know if the town has the ability to accept donations today and to issue receipts, or would this be a net new capability for the town? And that I mean, I can't imagine they don't have a treasury system, but maybe the donation receipt issuance would be net new.
Yeah, and I'm gonna let Eric expand on that and answer that question. The short answer is yes, but where we've also there's been some speculation on resistance is people not wanting to just donate to the town. Like write a check to the town of Carbondale, and then they don't really know where their money's going. Eric.
Yeah, and we do as a not for profit, I think that's probably what you were looking at, have the ability to accept donations, provide a tax write-off for a donation. We don't get an opportunity to do that very often for maybe exactly what you just talked about, paying your
Is your mic on, Eric? Can you hear him, Brian?
Sorry, Brian, did you hear that?
I did. Thank you.
Okay.
Yeah, so so there's a philosophical thing to connect with a very well-known local foundation to handle that piece of your donation as a donor, versus writing a check to the town who you just wrote your water bill to, who you just wrote your, trash bill to. And so, it's a separation and I think all of us kind of hit on it before that the longer, I think this conversation is about the pool, but it's also about a longer range look at the needs of the Parks and Rec department and some funding challenges we're going to have for many years here while we're paying off the debt that we just went into for the pool. And so this is kind of potentially a way for us to have an avenue for somebody who has a pet project in the future, and our tax revenue is not going to be able to afford that project, and we are able to say, hey, there's this great way to build nest egg for that project through a very well-respected local foundation. And so that's kind of some of the desires for the long-term vision of trying to figure out how this could work. So
Understood. Well, the Parks and Rec is an operating entity of the town and not its own entity, right?
yes, yeah, we're the town. Yeah.
So do we have clarity on whether donations through a third party vehicle that operates as a 501c to be directed by Parks and Rec is any different than being directed by the town? And is this materially different than a donation that would be put into an account other than the general account with a soft earmark for Parks and Rec? And really what I'm asking is that if Parks and Rec is an operating entity of the town, then this fund would exist at the direction of the town itself, not necessarily Parks and Rec, because Parks and Rec's authority here would be superseded by the towns. And so if the town said, no, you're not actually going to do that with this fund, and they directed ACF not to do a certain thing with the fund that was in the interest of Parks and Rec, and they said instead that's going to go towards whatever. Do we have clarity on whether that is the actual reality, or whether this is a way for Parks and Rec to separate funds from the general account?
We'd have to ask our lawyer about how
Yeah.
that would look on in the documents, I think.
So
But
Brian, I
the
think,
intention is to raise funds for parks and recreation projects, so not to, pay employee housing or something,
Understood.
So
But
I think we could detail that in the,
Brian,
in
can
the
I,
documents.
I just want to clarify too, y'all, that we're on an exploratory thing here. And if we're interested in pursuing this, then it's going to go down to more detail. We can't set this up without the trustees getting involved. And many of the trustees know about our conversation here tonight and, have expressed support to me personally, just in casual conversations in some areas. So it's, we're not going to nail down all these details, and definitely our attorney's going to have to get involved in looking at all the stuff. It's just like, are we favorable towards pursuing this further? So that, just remember, we're at like the 30,000 foot level. Okay.
okay,
Understood.
Ashley has wanted to say something. Susan, hang
I
on.
can remember.
I'm sorry, Ashley.
I was gonna ask Eric, if I were to write a check for the pool to the town and we're not going through a foundation, would there be a guarantee that way that the money goes towards my intention?
I think that we would locate it in that donation into a line item that would be earmarked for the pool. That'd be possible, and you could get a tax deductible receipt for that donation from the town.
Okay, so it's just more the reluctance of donating to government that is a differentiator.
Susan.
so Brian, I'm going to try to rephrase your question and see if this is what you're kind of addressing. So if Mary Jones donates, I don't know, $100,000 because she wants us to have a 10-person hot tub instead of a 4-person hot tub or whatever it is, And then, and she donates that money and says, this is what I want it to be spent on. And then the trustees say, no, we're not doing a 20-person hot tub. We're only going to do a 6-person hot tub. Are her funds, have her funds been hijacked essentially by the trustees?
My hypothesis is that this is not an effective vehicle to make sure that those funds cannot be redirected by the town to arbitrary other
Okay.
uses.
Right, okay.
So outside of, you're talking about even outside of the pool, Brian?
If
Like
Parks and Rec
to
is an
pave,
operate,
to pave to pave 8th Street.
correct. If Parks and Rec is an operating entity of the town, then this is not an effective mechanism to separate funds exclusively for Parks and Rec versus just earmarking them within the regular budget. Because it's not actually Parks and Rec that directs the funds, it is the town itself, and the town can do what the town wants. And there's no way to separate budget allocations using outside entities. That's my hypothesis of where this leads.
Okay. Eric, I think that's a Mark Hamilton question.
Yep.
Got it? Okay. So like we got a recording to watch though too. Yeah.
Right, I wanted to ask a question about the $100,000 to establish the fund and what that looks like. If, we have to get a grant to get that money to start the fund, or we have to wait till someone's willing to donate that much. How do we pull the trigger there? And what happens if we're starting to pay off the construction of a project and we dip below that?
That is that's the minimum to establish the fund. And then you could take out 20,000 the next day. So that really is just to establish the fund, but there's no minimum balance required after that.
I don't know if that in my head answers how we come up with 100,000 to start the process of accepting donations, but I guess that's an issue with the town and loans and whatever.
Pledges, as Susan is.
I didn't win the
Mention-
lottery.
She said, you said that you were gonna get.
It was a really
100,000?
big.
I didn't win the lottery.
I didn't either. I just wanted to walk into Eric's office and write him a check for 15 million. But that didn't work. It was a good dream though.
I mean, Hollis and I both did. We were,
Yeah, we were
had
like-
2 times as many chances.
And, and I think how we come up with 100,000, well, we know we can't use town funds for that. Because that gets into other things. When we talked with Lauren about that, Eric, do you remember why? Because we can't use public funds or something like that to seed it.
What was the reason there?
We can't use public taxpayer funds
But why?
to seed the foundation, to come up with 100,000 to open our account with ACF.
Understood, but what is the reason that we cannot use those funds?
Because because we can't use taxpayer funds for that, like people paying their taxes that go into our town budget. We can't use it that way. I don't know why. That's just what she said. And she's an attorney too. So I'm gonna
Okay.
trust Lauren to know what's
I mean,
going on.
The
I don't
lawyer
know
stuff-
that,
Lawyer stuff is its own reason. I get it.
right? So, there's ways, I know that there's people that know people in town that when we get to that point, we can do an ask, if they donate and this is what it's for. So like once again, I said, we got more steps to do, but it's like, is this a favorable approach? And are we as a group, leaning towards looking at this further? So are there any more I know we've got, because there's a whole bunch of fundraising questions, but does anybody else, are there any other questions kind of in regards, I look at it kind of like the structure and how it operates. Are there any other questions around that before we let Stephanie start talking about the fundraising questions that we have? Brian? Anything?
No, although not having numbers for the historic returns is an incredibly important element here.
And I'm
Um,
sure we can get it from Stephanie.
I mean,
Yes, I'll send that tomorrow.
We'll have it in our next packet. How's that sound?
we're saying typically you measure the return on a external manager, like by taking their total return and reducing it by their fees and reducing it by the services offered. And so not having the primary number that we deduct these things from is it's a large element of the consideration, but understood. Thank you.
I just had a quick question, Stephanie, on kind of just to understand why those other non-profits that you mentioned, that have the non-endowed organizational funds, like, I'm trying to figure out what their purpose of that is. Is it to get just a location in a box where money is kind of held and stored for future large capital projects, or is that why they're kind of in that organizational fund?
The organization funds that we have, I believe that let me look at the list. All but one have been around for at least 5 years before I came. So they have been established for quite some time. They aren't particularly active. Some of them don't take draws on them at all, or just occasionally.
Do you think it was, they had to come up with $100,000 at some point though. So
Right.
That's what I'm trying to figure out, how they did that, first of all. But, and you think it was a large donor that just wanted, to put his money in, and believed in their mission and just said,
Right. I
just
do know
put this away.
there is two of them actually. So two of them. So AVSC has 3 funds with us, and they established another one this year, or their 3rd one this year. And it was a donor that came to them and said, this is what I want to do. So I do know that that's how that one came about. And then Trees, Water, People is actually a nonprofit out of Fort Collins, Colorado. And one of their, I think a trustee or a board member lives in the Valley and wanted a vehicle for just really visibility for other donors to give to that fund. So those funds came from the organization. I don't know how they came up with them.
And do any of those nonprofits then go back to ACF and actually write grants to try to get money from that side of the business, or?
We do have a competitive community grant making program every year that nonprofits apply for.
So they could be in both is kind of my question.
They
could
could
have
apply
that
for a
fund and then
grant.
apply for grants. Okay.
The Buddy program is a current grantee, as is AVSC for their scholarship program.
Yep. Okay. Just interesting. I just want to
Yeah.
try to figure out why they were there if they're already a 501c3 and have their own system, but.
You have a question, Drew?
Yeah, well, from my understanding, correct me if I'm wrong, since we've worked, I work at a local school and we've worked with you guys before. I think the benefit would be is that you guys have access to donors that are not town members, local residents who are writing checks for whatever amount they can donate. Is that correct? That you guys also approach donors that are not necessarily here and are looking for tax benefits and donating to causes that they believe in that are at much higher quantities of money than we're talking about residents donating. Is that correct?
So part of our mission is connecting donors to community needs. So you're right in saying that when opportunities or maybe they're fundraising for a specific purpose, or, you know, they're requesting additional funds for the hot tub to be a 20-person instead. So even putting together something that we can send out to our donors or our donor advisors. You know, we have a captive audience with the donor advisors that have funds and are looking for ways to donate. We also have a newsletter that has been revamped the past 6 months. And so we're adding more granting or donating opportunities for people that might be interested. And that has a wide reach, both prospects and donors.
So what are your annual donations from those sources based on your outreach efforts, whether it's newsletter or others? In aggregate, not specific to a source or a target.
So our last year we brought in around 21 million and granted out 17 million. And that includes all of ACF grants or ACF contributions, as well as donor advised funds, and the granting out from donor advised funds and ACF.
And that 21 million is directly linked to your outreach efforts. So you have, I mean, just like corporate marketing saying, hey, this email resulted in this click, which resulted in this donation. All of that has traceability. Of that 21 million, it has traceability back to outreach efforts from you and not the targets themselves.
So as a community foundation, we have to fundraise for all of our grant making. So we are always fundraising. We are always connecting with donors in the community, partners. It's really, I don't have any statistics on like clicks that actually brought in all of the funds. But that also includes that 21 million is the amount that comes into organization funds, field of interest funds, scholarship funds, donor advised funds. So that includes all of those contributions as well. So that is all inclusive as an organization.
What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to put a value on the kind of the captive donor pool that you just described. And I'm trying to say your outreach out to that captive donor pool, the expected value of that, it has been X in aggregate to your organization, to your donors. That is a value add of your offering on top of what they themselves are otherwise doing to collect donations. And so if the number is total donations, then there's no way to break out what the value of that captive pool that you just described actually is. This is the same thing in marketing terms. You call this a campaign. What is the value of this particular campaign? What is the value when outreach was done to this captive pool? How much is that expected to bring in? You don't break that out from general donations from your, I don't really know what the word would be, clients, customers, anything like that. It's just all one net donation number.
We do have, I could provide which is all in our 990 in our annual report, the amount of contributions into each of the kinds of funds that we hold.
But not the source of those contributions, whether they're from your campaigns or the customer / donatee campaigns that they may have done independently of your organization.
So are you referring to other organization like funds and what they bring in?
Well, so let's say Parks and Rec launches a marketing campaign to go collect donations, and Parks and Rec itself invested $500,000 into this marketing campaign. It produces a return in that your organization also reaches out to your donor network that we were just discussing. Do you track the difference between the returns that would have been achieved between Park and Rec's own campaign in your campaign through your donor network? And I guess what I'm asking is, of the campaigns that are exclusive to your organization through your donor network, what are the aggregate returns, maybe relative to the the customer organization's own campaigns or something like that. Again, the purpose of the question is to find out what is the overall value of that donor network that you just discussed. And is this something that occasionally a donation comes in, or is this something that's a primary driver for people to come onto your platform because you have this network of people looking to place money into deserving entities and sources and efforts. And it turns out that working with your organization causes a material influx of donations from this network of donatees or donators.
I think I know what you're asking.
Can I try, like, okay, Brian, as an example, okay, so at the end of a year, our fund has $1 million in it. And we launched a big, huge campaign, right? And because Margaret was out knocking on people's doors and with a hat in her hand or whatever, we brought in $500,000 or 500 million, or what did I say, 1 million, 500,000. We brought in $500,000 just from like our efforts here. But then Stephanie and her team and everybody else reached out to their donor network or whatever, and we got another $500,000 from the donor network. Is that what you're asking? Like, you know, how much more are they bringing in above and beyond what we would have brought in? Is that what you're asking?
If a benefit is this captive network of donors, what is the value of that benefit? So if the town goes out and they achieve $1 million, their actions achieve $1 million of donations, and then $200,000 worth of donations comes in that is due to the outreach to this captive donor network, okay, we can measure that. We can say that the value of that return was $200,000. But to lump that together and say $1.2 million of donations was achieved is not an accurate reflection of the value of this network. And the 21 million that was quoted before is total donations. So that doesn't talk about the source of them. So if the town puts considerable investment into getting donations, those are donations that would have occurred regardless because of the town's efforts, not necessarily where the money was held or the vehicle through which the donations are made. And so if we're going to tout it as a benefit, it would be good to understand the expected return on the benefit.
That's a really good point that you're making. I don't have the data on that.
Can you see if they have it?
Mhm.
From my perspective there, if the donor network is able to raise money that you didn't have the ability to raise on your own, and it covers 1%, then there's value there.
Yeah.
That's my read on it. So
Absolutely. And that value is measured at 1%, but that's when you know what it is. You know that hey, the donor network put in 1%, bang. This is 1% value add straight up. That automatically covers your management costs. But those are important numbers.
yeah, agreed.
Okay. It's 8:00. I just want everybody to be aware, because not that we can't adjust the agenda like we usually do. But anyway, I just wanted everybody to be aware so we can be respectful of Stephanie's time too. And so I think we kind of already started talking about the fundraising stuff. So are there any of the other questions you kind of want to address, Stephanie, to clarify for us how how ACF can help us raise funds?
I believe one of the bullets was talking about being on a list of projects that a fund awards a percentage. I think that would be part of our community grant making program. And so that would be just an annual application process. And our guidelines are on our website, what those priorities are.
Can you speak to those a little? Would a pool be something that would be supported by the?
It has
Foundation.
not been in the past. Through our Cradle to Career initiative, that is our primary focus. So health and human services, education, but it's also making available other programs or opportunities that might not otherwise be available. So we don't fund capital projects. So just right off the bat, like funding that. But if it was for like, once it was built, if you were to apply for a grant for providing membership for those that could not afford it, that would qualify, or that would make it more appealing in our grant making process.
So we could apply for a grant for example, to hire a staff position to offer free swim lessons to kids under 8.
Mhm.
And we could pay a staff, we could apply for a staff salary, or would we would have to establish?
Did you specifically say that we weren't allowed to pay staff? Earlier?
Well, it would be it would essentially be a scholarship that say we have an early swim program that costs, I don't know, $200 a week or something. But we wanted to apply for $10,000 for to have that many children be able to have scholarships
Right.
to this program.
Right. Mhm.
That would be an appropriate application to the grant program.
Right.
Okay.
And as far as like paying a person, we wouldn't write a check to that person.
No,
We would give the grant to Parks and Rec, and then they would use it to fulfill.
for the purpose of this.
Right,
free
right. So
swim
that's
lesson
how it-
program. It couldn't be stolen or redirected by trustees towards
Paving 8th Street.
paving 8th Street.
Jared liked that idea.
You talk about broader in scope, if someone wanted, so you could make it like for a long term. I heard you talk about like, maybe it's beyond the pool. So if you establish a fund, there's as long as there's some kind of funds in there that keeps it open, a fund can stay open for as long as there's money in there. So if you made it broad, just a Carbondale Parks and Rec fund, then donors could say what the purpose of their donation is for. So it's for this fund, Carbondale Parks and Recreation Fund, for the pool, or for I don't know what other.
Free swim lessons.
I was like gonna say that for the swim program. We wouldn't want it to get too granular, but you can we would be able to allow donors to make donations to that fund, and then let us know for what purpose.
So it kind of be in our fund, it would be earmarked in a certain way.
Mhm.
And the governance requiring that the funds be used for that purpose would be what?
When all contributions are entered into our system, they all have a purpose. So we know what the fund, where it's going and what the purpose is.
The stated purpose based on the donation.
Right.
But that is a note similar to like a memo on a check. But the memo on a check has no real bearing on the usage of the check. And so if we started talking about people donating funds for a particular purpose, what is the governance that requires the funds to be used for those purposes? Or what is the materiality of that purpose element behind the donations?
So we have a coding system where we put the purpose of all of our contributions into our system. And really that is a benefit, right? So at our top priority as mine of the philanthropy department is to make sure that we are, we know what the donor intent is. And if we don't know, then we find out. That's what makes community foundations what they are, is that we steward donor intent, donors, what they want their money to go towards. So it's
So-
not just a memo, it's actually it's in the acknowledgement letter, what fund it went into and for what purpose. If there's no purpose, it's okay. They just tell us, no, it's for general operating, or it's for whatever, this is a donation that, we're making to ACF in an unrestricted fund. And then we know that we can use it for whatever we need. If it is specifically for our Cradle to Career Fund, and they want it to go to early childhood, then it's earmarked for early childhood. And that's what we know that it has to go towards.
Let me give an example, and maybe Rose will appreciate this one. If somebody made a donation and they said that I want the swing set at X park to be fixed, here's $10,000. That should more than cover a new swing set for this particular park. What happens between that and the swing set replacement that causes that money to be used only for swing set replacement?
So we would not allow it to get that granular. I would talk to the donor and I would say, I'm wondering if you would support your dollars going towards playground equipment in the town of Carbondale. So it would start out there. And then the reason that ACF does not grant or write checks to vendors is that's one of the reasons. So we, as an organization fund, we give the money back to the organization when they request it. So it's actually back on you to make sure that those funds are used for the intended purpose.
So the relevant level of granularity with respect to donations is the fund level. So if there's a fund that says Parks and Rec, then the relevant level of granularity is Parks and Rec. If there's one that says pool replacement, that's a relevant level of granularity because that's where you route the money, versus equipment replacement at playgrounds. That would have to be a separate fund, and you would achieve the routing of that money by virtue of saying, okay, this is playground equipment, this is the equipment fund. We will populate that fund with this donation. Fair?
No.
We can track and keep track of donor intent and we can do like Parks and Rec pool, Parks and Rec playgrounds, but repairing a swing at the corner of 3rd and Main that wouldn't work for us. If you're going to make decisions about a particular swing, then that would be once you requested the funds from your side to say, we need, we're requesting $20,000 from the Parks and Rec for all the funds that are unrestricted or directed towards parks.
Playground.
That's
playground.
understood.
So then we would give it to you.
That's understood. That's why my example used 2 funds, one for the pool, one for equipment, not specifically a swing. So it sounds a lot like when you're talking about routing based on intent, the routing is to a given fund. And it is up to the customer to create the funds at the level of granularity they desire. But there is no earmarking, does not exist beyond which fund it gets routed to. Is that?
No,
that
it
reasonable?
does. No. They could specify pool. They could specify playground.
So I could make a donation. I could call Eric and I could say, I'm sick and tired of this broken swing. I'm donating $50,000 to fix this swing. I'm going to do it through Aspen Community Foundation because I want to have a tax receipt for that. I'm going to tell them it's just for Parks and Rec, but Eric, I'm telling you, it's for that swing. Eric, you need to get a hold of ACF, get that money and send it on that swing, or I'm going to beat you up. Right? I mean, that's how I can get what Brian is trying to get to. But I want the money to be spent in this particular way, but I need to contact the parks to do that, not ACF. And I kind of need to have some guarantee before I make that donation that it's going to be used that way. Is that kind of what you're asking, Brian?
Well, I'm trying to figure out who is the guardian, the custodian of this money. It doesn't seem typical for the treasury of the money to decide what is an acceptable purpose.
You know,
And so
Brian,
that-
I think this is
Yeah.
where we're going to have to talk to Mark Hamilton and find out, because there may be an advisory commission, an advisory board that is outside of this commission that may have a couple of trustees on it. It may have a couple of us on it, might have a couple citizens on it or whatever. I mean, I don't know what that looks like, that then would have to go, to Eric, and Eric goes to the trustees or something like that. We have to find out what that whole chain of, command, for lack of a better term, would be. And I think Drew's got a question or something. Did you?
Well, I just understood it that when you were talking about donations were coded, that if Parks and Rec then contacts ACF and says, we're trying to fix a swing, what money is then allocated to Parks and Rec either comes out of the general fund or something that's been coded for playground equipment. Is that correct?
Mhm.
Okay. I think that's what you're trying to get at, Brian, is that they are the custodians of how that money is used. It's just not down to the swing level. It's all Parks and Rec, and it's based on our request. Whatever we're trying to fix, then they say, well, we have 20,000 in general funds and we've got 60,000 in playground equipment. Do you want all of it? And that's kind of how it's distinguished. And then it's based on us to spend it however we want to in whatever project it is. Does that hopefully clarify?
It does, but that's what I meant about the fund level. We would establish a fund for equipment. We would establish a fund for pool.
No, it's
With
all
the
one
rep-
fund and it's coded. That's what she was describing earlier.
There's like line items
okay.
items, like our budget.
Okay,
We have one big
Got it.
number with a bunch of line items. Right? Okay. I'm getting some head shakes here. Okay, it's 8:15. Is there anything you would like to add, Stephanie, before I ask these guys if they have any finals for you?
No, I welcome the questions, and you can send me questions and I can just send them back to you too, or invite me back. I'm happy to help,
Great.
however we can. And this could take years, or you could decide that this isn't for you, and that is completely fine. We're just here
It
to
has
help.
been years.
Yeah.
It has been years. You're right.
And I will find out, I'm sorry, I didn't bring the returns on the funds. I just didn't think about it. It wasn't on our list, so I didn't bring it. I apologize. So I'll get back on that, and then I'll find out if we have the data about the value of the expected return. So from our outreach efforts, what we have seen in the past.
Okay, great. Ashley?
Sorry, I wanted a clarification. So I think based on what our goals are, the granting process that you all do wouldn't help us, because at the beginning stage, we're after a capital improvement
Mhm.
project. But is the benefit that you provide is you're still connecting us with donors, you're still putting our project name out there that we're looking to raise funds, and if you so feel like you can put money into our bucket. Is that accurate?
Up until your last phrase of putting money in your bucket.
They put it into yours? Or,
Oh, if we put out something to donors and they said, oh, I want to give to that project, it would go into your fund.
Okay.
Yes.
So
Mhm.
that would be something, that's the connecting
Right.
that you would do.
Right.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Margaret, do you have anything? No. Okay. Okay,
Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank
You are
you.
welcome.
so much.
So safe.
Yeah. Slow, slow and steady. Thank you, Stephanie.
You're welcome.
I'm sure
Thank
we'll
you.
be in touch
Mhm.
as we continue the conversation.
Weather usually gets worse at the song.
Yeah. Um. So what do we have on here? Okay, information and discussion. Oh, yeah. I guess for, one question I have is just taking a couple minutes on this is where do you think we should go from here with this? We've got this information now. What, is this something that you guys are interested in pursuing? Just from what you've heard, like, or is this like, I'm not interested? Ashley?
The staggered terms, the whole.
No, I'm talking about the pool, the
Oh.
community, because I don't know where to go from here right now. So I'm kind of open up, yeah.
Could we have the town come in and describe to us what the process would look like with them? Because I didn't realize that donations could be tax deductible if they went directly to the town. And so just kind of as I don't know, devil's advocate or opposite approach, could we hear from finance?
Yeah, so who would that be? Well, do we want Mark Hamilton to come in and maybe Lauren? And I mean, how,
No, I mean, I think
Who would this
with
be?
them, we do it this kind of the same way we did with her. We come up with the questions that we need to know and then we put it out to them, and, I don't think we need to bring them into a meeting. I just think we need our questions answered, by town policy and finance. So,
If we could list the benefits of the service and then compare them to the benefits that the town's own folks say that they offer, I think that would be a good starting point.
yeah.
Yeah, so kind of think, I think what. Is the town a nonprofit?
Not
Town is a
for
governmental entity. It's not a nonprofit, but it's government.
No.
You can give
And
money to the
donations
government
a
without paying
government
taxes.
agency are tax deductible?
That's a town lawyer question. My Googling says if it's for a public purpose, then yes.
Yeah.
Like
It's
you don't
not
pay,
for
you don't pay taxes on the money you give to the IRS. I mean, it kind of goes with that question. You can give extra money to the government and they don't penalize you for it.
So that's all the questions I'm sure Kay captured too, that are for the attorney.
Yeah.
I don't know if we need to restate those now.
I can go back and listen to the recording. Okay.
That sounds like a good next step to kind of do a comparison with what the town can do and what a CF can do and have a comparison, SWOT analysis of both.
Okay.
And so that what the foundation can do is what your last question was about, that they can advertise our project and connect us to other donors who might go, oh, yeah, we think Carbondale should have this capital improvement. We'll pitch money that direction.
Mhm.
So it might give us a broader audience for donations.
Mhm.
And they also have a receipt issuance process for donations that the town may or may not have. There's an optics difference between donating to this community nonprofit versus the town.
Yeah.
Mhm.
There is unknown return differences. It's totally possible that the town treasury has zero net return on held funds and they use that for something else. This organization may or may not make or lose money on this. And there's the risk element. The town money is probably risk-free, whereas this organization naturally carries risk because of bankruptcy, blah, blah, blah.
And then getting clarification on who's administering or requesting funds or being clear on where they're going.
Yeah, that'd be like a process then, right?
Yeah, processing.
Process.
The town finance people would probably be excellent here because this is their whole world. You would very clearly compare the differences between two different types of services.
Okay. Okay,
So in answer to your question, Hollis, I think it's worth continuing this conversation.
okay. Okay, thanks, you guys. Gives me something to noodle about. Ongoing noodles. Okay, see if I can even explain things after this conversation. Sometimes my mind gets all jumbly out of this stuff. Okay, I think I tried to lay out the situation as best I could to give you guys some opportunities to think about things.
Are we on to
As-
staggered?
As we're now on staggered terms. Yes, thank you. Staggered terms, let's start with that because there's kind of two pieces to this. One is looking at the staggered terms and then the other piece to it is, what is the other piece? Changing the timing of everything. So, hopefully you guys have had a chance to read over this. I don't really feel like I need to, reread it other than we have 5 people whose terms are expiring in 2023. And Misha's, the youth commissioners, is an annual one, so that's gonna expire every time. Brian is the alternate right now, and so the alternate is on this cycle. And then Ashley, myself, and Rose's terms are up. As you can see from whatever page that is in the page 16. It's kind of like I've, tried to lay it out so you could see, what happened. So really all we're looking at and what we need to look at is we're talking about terms. We're not talking about people matched with those terms. Because terms get set and then people are appointed to terms. So I know that you had a question, I think, Rose, the last time, like where the chair and the vice chair should be 3-year terms. Kind of have to throw that out and just look at, are we going to move one of these so that it moves into a cycle that would expire in 2025? And then, that would be a 3-year term going forward from there that would balance everything out regardless of who the chairs or the vice chairs are or any of that stuff. Because really, it could be somebody else. Yeah, they could like fire both of us. And that's okay too.
In the minutes, you wouldn't know what to do without us.
So are there any questions or comments on any of this stuff? Is it pretty clear cut or is it confusing?
Didn't we already decide all this?
No, we didn't
We made a
decide.
decision, we had the conversation.
We had a conversation that we were going to talk about it this time. I was giving you a heads up last month.
I think what you organized here is great, and I think your suggestion, your proposal for the next assignments is right on in keeping with what we wanted to do to get to appropriately staggered terms.
Okay.
And then and also the condition that if somebody vacates their position, the position term limit continues to be the same.
Mhm.
The person occupies that until that term is over. Not, so it could be 6 months or 1 year or whatever.
Hollis, again, you blow me away with all the extra work that you put in on this. I really appreciate it.
Great.
I imagine the other commissions are gonna follow suit. Like this is stuff that we'll use for the town and I really appreciate all the extra effort that you put into this because this is very thorough and explains everything to the T. So thank you for doing all the math and figuring it out and putting it on paper in such a readable form.
Well, you're welcome. And this comes from previous experience with people coming and going and other terms, so I'm trying to help Erica get all squared away. So yeah, because the whole idea is once it's set, now this should just go on, and we're all kind of balanced out. So, okay, so do we have a motion then? Yeah. What do you?
I move to change for this time only one of voting /
Yeah,
regular
girl, get
member
it.
terms expiring in 2023 to be a 2-year term appointment that will expire in 2025. Therefore, the appointment of that term will be for 3 years.
I second.
All in favor?
I.
Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, so we got that going. Thank you, everybody. Then the next piece is, how we, that affects the town code where we will have to go to, the trustees and ask. And the first thing that is just, is to get rid of that doggone special meeting thing that, requires extra postings, extra agenda, ending meetings, starting meetings, Kay doing, starting a recording, ending a recording, all this craziness around there. So, are you guys all in favor of like getting rid of the special meeting requirement to appoint
I am in
people?
favor of getting rid of the special meeting requirement.
Yeah. Oh, did you have a question, Drew?
I guess my only question is then the interview process would just happen during regular monthly meetings?
That's what we did with you, but we
Right.
had to adjourn to then convene a special meeting and then
Perfect, okay.
adjourn that. So it would, yes,
Cool.
it would happen and just be part of the meeting. Trustees don't even have to do this. Like when they saw our agenda, who was it? No, it wasn't Janet that called me. Somebody called me and they're like, Kathy, Hollis, why are you doing this? And I'm like, because it says in the town code. She goes, oh, it does? She's like, the trustees don't even have to do this. I'm like, okay.
Gotcha.
So anyway, so let's have a one motion. We'll do each of them individually then. And we have a motion to get rid of the special meeting requirement for the appointment of commission members.
You didn't write the words. I can't read them.
Did I have words?
You had words for the other one.
I wrote the motion. I know I didn't do it this time. I just gave it to you though. You could say so moved.
We need a motion.
I am loopy.
I move that we eliminate the need to have a special meeting in order to fill an empty position on the Parks and Rec Commission.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
I-
Aye. Anyone opposed? All right, thank you. So then the last piece to this that we talked about was the timing of when all of this occurs. And I think what really kind of opened our eyes to this was the opportunity that we had when Drew was appointed, for him to get involved. And well, it was interesting because, Susan, when you came on, you started asking questions and it was like, well, when do we get to participate in setting priorities and stuff? Because, by September, it's all set. And so then we got to see it firsthand with Drew coming on. Was May your first meeting?
First meeting, yep.
And then we did our tour in June. And I mean, I've just watched the opportunity for Drew to just hop in and get involved. And it just seemed to bring him up to speed so much faster and get him participating. So I don't know what timing makes sense for you guys. And then Misha, you had some thoughts too about.
Just given I don't know, the nature of the youth alternate position and the whole school teen aspect of it, I feel like it would be easier to communicate if it were kind of like a spring thing, because we're still in school, and it's more imminent that way. I feel like people would be more, I don't know, receptive or likely to participate if they didn't have to keep track of it for 3 months and then apply in August or whatever. So I don't really know what the next steps are for that, but I mean, I think a May turnover would be definitely better for the youth alternate.
Is there an option to align this on curriculum to actually make it so it's beneficial within one of your programs or extracurricular or something like that?
As far as I know, no. I mean, do you remember Bowdoin had some kind of like town affiliated capstone a
Mhm.
little while ago? Which is just like our senior project, our capstone project. So, I mean, I think it would be kind of like up to the student maybe to take that opportunity if they wanted to, but I'm not really sure. Maybe that's like a conversation with the principal or something like that.
When do you decide on your capstone projects, just so we understand?
It's like
timing.
Mid junior year. So, I mean, it doesn't perfectly align, but someone could probably like make it work. Figure out that they're doing their capstone as this and then apply maybe the following year, something like that, or if they're already involved.
We changed that appointment date to, May, at the end of their junior year, then that would last the year and be part of their capstone project for their senior years.
Also incorporating planning, because it's not guaranteed. So if you're saying your capstone is going to be this, and there are 5 people planning in one slot, then that needs to be addressed. But like you're doing work, it should be recognized. It should certainly be able to be incorporated into something that counts towards some element of your projects or your curriculum or something like that. It seems it's more of an opportunity for us than it is you to go and create some sort of a program around participation in this board, in this committee.
Yeah, I mean,
Well, but it also contributes to your applications for
Yeah.
colleges and all that
Well,
other stuff.
like-
Leslie, you wanted to say something?
strictly school related.
Yeah.
I just was able to, have this on my resume.
And-
Which personally for me was like, that's fine.
And really Eric, is there it just says under 18. So I mean, a freshman or a sophomore could
Yeah,
come on and be on for, ask to be on for 3 or 4 years, every year or what,
true. I think I could advertise it a little bit more too this year. So maybe there would be like, I don't know, more applicants.
Well, especially if it's in the winter, right?
For sure.
When
If it's like
school's in
mid-
session and instead of the summer, when nobody's around. Not even us for like trying to fill our regular positions, right? Who's looking at stuff like that? We're all out of hiking and biking and swimming. Yeah.
Hollis, senior capstones are due in December, just so you know.
Oh,
They're to be completed.
to be finished. Oh, so your project's gonna be done in December?
That's like the deadline. I mean, yeah, well, it's from last year, I know that maybe it wasn't quite so strict in terms of the deadline and when it was actually done. But I mean, I think there's probably some way to modify it if you wanted like Parks and Recreation Youth Alternate Member to be your capstone. Given that it's like a commitment, you commit to the full year, even if it's due in December, I feel like, I don't know, serving 7 months or whatever probably meets the requirement that serving 12 months would meet.
We get it, right in time for ski season. We understand.
Yeah. What's the question here? Are we trying to set another date that's not August 31st that works
Yeah.
for both the student and
Yeah.
for everyone else?
That's kind of the question and then the request has to go to the trustees.
Do we have our calendar
For
in
the
here?
applications for all of the positions, including the youth, or are we just talking to youth?
No, we're talking about changing our starting and ending dates
So when do
I don't know, I'm gonna suggest May 1st, but
when do we do our prioritization? When do we do budgeting?
We start that in kind of, June, kind of July. July is our like.
And then
first
it's due
budgeting goal.
September?
Yeah, for the next year, yeah. Because we're utilizing that June park visit to kind of drive that process too, so.
Yeah, May sounds good.
So I have one question about this. Would the person or would the people theoretically, would they like apply in April and then start in May, or would they apply in May and June
Probably-
would be their first?
probably March, April. February, March, April, somewhere in there, that'd be. When do we, Eric, like now, if we're like actually appointing or coming to a final decision like in August and then it goes to the trustees for appointment, when do we start? June? Asking for like advertising?
Yeah, like, usually,
Couple months,
yeah, 2 months in advance.
2 months in advance. So then it would be like March.
Have applications in March, have interviews in April, and choose.
Yeah, or March, April, we can interview a couple times or whatever. I don't know. Just kind of, that's our internal workings, but that's kind of the rough idea, rough calendar.
Let's back into this. If we want to be serious about this, then we need a plan around student schedule. And if we're going to take 2 months to interview and consider, then we need to say at what point are people going to start applying based on the influences within their system. With like, when does it start dawning on people that, hey, I have this program, maybe it's my government program, and we get these ideas that we need to do something like this. 3 weeks into the program, we start realizing that we need to apply for these committees. That's around the time where we want to start accepting applications. And then we can have our 2 months after that to interview and do whatever. But that is a schedule that we need to work around. And so I guess the question is, if we're serious about a in-school person on the board, what is the point at which people start thinking about applying based on the natural tenor of their curriculum and how things go? I have no idea. Is it the first month? Is it 6 weeks in? Is it 1 week in? And let's align the application period to that, and then say, okay, people generally know within the first, this is notional, 2 weeks of starting a given semester that they're going to want to do this thing. Let's add 2 months onto that and let's make that our acceptance period. That's going to maximize the number of people that are able to participate and able to apply without having to be wizards and know beforehand that they wanted to do this.
Hollis,
Yeah,
I just also, for me to think about it, kind of need a schedule of, because I'm new still,
yeah,
of what we do every month. Does that make
that's the
Because
master calendar.
master calendar? Because then I'm thinking if we're interviewing people and we're trying to do some really important things, I don't want to.
Well, the master calendar is in that.
Big packet.
Mhm.
Okay.
And it needs to be revised. I mean, I'm still in the process of revising it and I need to get, we've moved things around on the master calendar. But things on the master calendar are a lot of times movable. That's where the budget thing is not. The park tour is not. Those are probably our most solid things. Eric, don't you think? And then lots of it is check-ins with the MOUs and like when the weed thing has to be done. The pool project is a special project, obviously, that, we aren't going to have a capital project year after year after year. What else?
Can we do them separate? Can the student be more on an academic start? And I think the professional does make, or not professional, but the regular position makes sense right before the park tour. I think that's a good orientation.
Yeah, and I mean, the other thing too is like, for an example, Misha, his capstone project has nothing to do with Parks and Rec.
And we've also struggled
You
to
know?
fill that role
Yeah, and
up until now.
And so we may or may not have somebody who's interested in adding that to the curriculum, or whatever they're doing. So if they want, when do they pick the capstone project? Now? No.
So the way it works is, they junior year,
Mhm.
they actually write it, what they want to do. So they would be developing January through March.
Mhm,
And they have to have an approved proposal.
mhm,
And then senior year, they start working on it. And it's supposed to be due in December.
mhm. So, I mean, I think if, I'm just, well, Misha's our dude here now. So, I mean, if he's, he was saying to me today, like he could, put it on announcements and newsletters, and he can be promoting it. And if somebody was interested, they could actually sit with Eric and talk about a possible capstone thing, which then they would go through the appointment, the process and look at that. So, I mean, it does give us time to build, and Misha can be advertising it
Yeah,
January 1st,
whatever you guys want the calendar to look like, I mean, tying it into some sort of academic thing, it feels like it, I don't know, maybe that's not the way that some students would want to go with it, or do they feel like they need to go with that? They can kind of just, I don't know, go that way if they want to, but I feel like we can, I don't know, the student schedule can maybe work around like a little bit more, like it doesn't have to be quite so closely tied to what they're doing in school. So, I mean, whatever time is like,
in some ways, it does tie into the academic year though, right? Because
mean-
you're ending the school year in May,
yeah,
the end of May.
yeah. I
And
think
if
it
and
would
if
be
we're-
better to advertise like the whole thing of, getting a new member, getting more applicants would be more successful if we were able to like advertise it in the school year. But just in terms of like, I don't know when the term would start, I don't really feel like there's a super selective like schedule around that. Like, I feel like any time really throughout the year. So if they wanted to do it in May to align with like the other positions, I think that's fine. I don't think it's a super big deal to make it like align with the start of a semester or something like that.
Okay. I just noticed the time. We're way off the agenda. Do you guys want to table this till next month, or do you want to, what do you want to
I
do?
move that we move the application process for serving on the Parks and Rec Commission for both regular members and the student member to align with appointing new members in May of any given year, so that they are part of the budget process through the summer, the orientation and budget process through the summer.
Okay. Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay. All in favor? Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay. All right.
Great.
On we go. Susan, how fast can you talk?
I can talk really fast.
Okay, good.
So- Keep it to 5 minutes. So there's been a lot of emails and issues raised, and I've read a couple of papers on dog aggressive behavior and neutering and non-neutering, and there is not a one-to-one correlation between an aggressive dog is not neutered, a passive dog is neutered. Neutered dogs can be aggressive and non-neutered dogs can be passive. So having signage in our parks that says non-neutered dogs are not allowed is not a reasonable rule to throw into our parks, our dog parks mix. I'm going to continue over the next month to look at some more information and work with Eric and maybe John and a couple of people in the dog community to get some agreed on rules that we want to have on signage. What I would like to know, and perhaps Eric, you can answer this, is if we want to have new signage for dog rules in our parks next summer, that is not part of this. Can that be part of this year's budget cycle, or is it too late for that, for new signage?
We have that could fit into the existing, park maintenance line items.
Okay.
It wouldn't, yeah, so we wouldn't need to allocate specific money for that. It could fit into what's already been allocated.
Okay. And you were already working on new signage for some parks. So do you have you want to have a order for signs that's all the signs that want to be created in a given year? Do you want to have that in like March, or do you have a
Yeah.
timeline on that?
Yeah, we'll probably do the thought process is to get a graphic artist involved in the design of those and to be able to brand that a certain way for Carbondale Parks and Rec. And so,
Right.
so that'd be kind of a request for proposal from, we can lay that out and put that out to many different graphic artists, and they would come back with a proposal as to, what.
And do you have a timeline of when you want to put out that request for proposal?
Probably, early spring. Yeah. So February, March.
So February.
Yeah.
So to have some proposal here for dog rules signs, that would be defined in January, so that those elements would be ready to give to a graphic design artist
Yep.
in February, that would be our goal.
Okay, and that also then includes working with the police department, code enforcement, and
Right.
how are we gonna enforce this? And how is this really gonna
Right.
really happen?
So one of
Okay.
the problems for Carbondale, being a small community, is that we don't have a lot of police staff that can be on alert to go deal with code issues. I did have a phone call with the code enforcement department of Douglas County, which has like 10 code enforcement officers, just that, right? They're a big operation. Night and day compared to what our concerns are. But as it turns out, in this one particular park, Hendricks Park, there are numerous dogs. It is not one dog. There are numerous dogs that are problems in that park. And so trying to pick on this one particular dog and man is also not an appropriate response. Although this particular individual is having a particular problem, and we need to hook her up with the police, code enforcement, about how to deal with a particular problem. So there really are two issues in the dog rules parks arena at the moment, and we will be working on them.
Yeah, and maybe part of it too is if we know that there's problems at Hendricks, is maybe there's got to be just some stepped up patrolling in that area and a presence around there and some observance, from that. So that's going to be talking to Kirk and Gretchen.
And I know John Williams keeps putting forth the idea of having some kind of volunteer group that would be the volunteer patrol or something like that. And I really don't think.
Not
we
right at
wanna
this stage. We
Go
gotta,
that way.
well, we probably have to get this situation under control first,
right.
to get to a normal
But
base.
putting
again.
that kind of enforcement and policing issue on public users in the dog community, I don't think is a
Mhm.
fair ask.
Yeah,
of
that may
those
not work,
people.
right?
Are we talking about a general rule for a specific problem? Because it sounds like we're talking about literally one, and I heard man combined with one dog, and the solution to that is a rule on non-neutered dogs.
Brian, you probably were not available the night that we had a conversation on all this. We had there's a resident, it's been about two months ago. So you could watch the recording. Denise Moss has brought up an issue forward that's going on at Hendricks. And so we had a whole conversation about it. We did vote on some language, but now it's probably inappropriate language. So that's why we're continuing to look into this, but we are having what seems to be ongoing dog aggressive behavior at Hendricks Park.
But surely we're not talking about a general rule to mitigate one dog and one person, right?
We already have code, we already have enforcement. I mean, like it's part of the Eric, what is it?
Yes,
It's a rule, it's a law.
This particular woman, Denise, has asked for us to, like yesterday, change the sign at Hendricks Park so that non-neuter dogs are not allowed to be there.
But who
She thinks
cares
that-
about that request? Like the
And she
problem
thinks
is this
that, she
dog
thinks
and
that
this
will solve her
person.
problem. And we've informed her that we have a public process about rules and posting rules in park, and it's
Yeah.
not going to happen next month.
Right.
It's going to be a process.
It is, we don't have a rule problem. We have an enforcement problem. And it's fine that this person asked for an additional rule to be added and signage to be posted. But if that's not enforced, it doesn't do anything and it doesn't help.
Right.
Like it sounds
Exactly.
like we probably already have law or we already have regulation or something enforceable regarding the behavior of this dog. We don't need to have
Exactly.
new signage. We just
Right.
need to bring somebody out there to ticket the person
Right.
on existing law. Like, why
Right.
are we talking about new signage for a
Well,
problem
be-
that's already covered?
Because that's partially legal liability to make sure that things are posted and stated in that. But that's why the next step is for Susan and Eric or whatever to get with Kirk and Gretchen and start hammering some things out on that. So,
The suggestion is that the town has legal liability for town codes that are not posted on signs.
ordinances, is it an ordinance? What is it?
Sorry,
Eric?
ordinances that are not posted, like, the suggestion is that ordinances need to be posted on signs to be ticketable.
The, in our town code, section 76270, says that use of dog parks and facilities. So all users of town dog parks and any other town facility that are open to either on leash or off leash dog usage are required to comply with all rules and regulations posted within or at the dog park or facility. So that's why, we do post our rules and the language of the ordinance at our dog park. So she was wanting to change that language and expand that language. And so that's the discussion is, can we do that? Is the language that the citizen wanted to add to that, fair to all dog owners and potential users of the park? And so that's where we are right now. We don't feel it is fair. It's the language that we had, that was requested to add to our rules are, if non-spayed or non-neuter dogs display aggressive behavior, they are not permitted within the facility. And so already in our rules, we already had a rule that aggressive dog behavior is not permitted within the park area, and with details on what that is. So we felt like if you had a non-spayed or non-neutered dog that is not aggressive, we didn't want to lock that dog out of a public dog park. So that's been the discussion on the language of this issue.
Yeah.
So.
And so Susan and John agreed to kind of work, continue to work on this offline or, and then bring stuff to us for efficiency. So that's where that's where we're at right now. So Susan's kind of updating us.
Got it. And can we do anything we want on the signs? Could we say like no pit bulls? Or is there a limit to what we can put on the signs?
The police department does not want us to have anything on the sign that is not enforceable. So, but with that code language, I just said, we have to have our rules posted there to be enforceable. So,
Yeah.
So that's where we're at.
That's circular logic. So can we put anything we want on the sign? Or can we not put anything we want on the sign because it's subject to some other external constraints? Because it's very specific to say a non-spayed or neutered dog may or may not do X. Somebody has already looked at the fact that we have the authority to put that on a sign, right?
Brian, I would look at the slides from last session. We had a couple of slide ideas along with the suggestions from the police department of what they were actually looking for.
Yeah.
So we had a whole full sign idea that someone had brought to our attention. Do we want something like this? Eric brought that to the actual police department. Which is also in the minutes. Yep. And the police department's response was, I don't want all of this stuff on there. I just want very simple, like no aggressive dogs, clean up the dog crap, like,
Yep.
make it
But-
easy.
So
Somebody like the town attorney have said that we have the authority to make statements like this on signs, which
Brian,
passes them
that's,
into law.
Brian, this is what these guys are working on, and they're going to bring more information back to us. So this is a continuing on, and I would encourage you to go back and listen to some of the recordings. Because right now we have about 5 minutes left. So I would like to move on. Susan, are you good with where you're going on
I'm good with this, and Brian, I'm
And we're
happy
gonna have
to,
more stuff coming, Brian.
Brian, I'm happy, would love to talk with you offline. Or off meeting.
Yeah. And if you want to get involved on that small group, like task force, Brian, go for it. Go for it. We love it. That's why I'm trying to get people to do some of these special projects and then bring stuff back. Okay. Eric, how fast can you talk? Oh, Susan, was there anything else? Okay. And Margaret.
We haven't forgot about you, Margaret. We're so excited to have you here.
I can go pretty quick. So 30, 60, 90. Let me just highlight a few real quick things. So Red Hill Shade Shelter and landscaping has begun up there. So we're going to be able to kind of close out that GoCo grant project up there this fall, which is great because we did get an extension of that GoCo grant to September of next year. So we'll be able to close it out. We did experience some rockfall out there. I don't know if and our porta potty structure that made it look all pretty out there got destroyed. And luckily nobody,
Was in it.
not a good way to go. We are looking at the weed mitigation. Carbondale is the integrated weed management plan, so we'll be putting that together, and that'll come before you guys, in about 60 days. So, and not next month, but the month after that. And then it'll be presented to the Board of Trustees the month after that also. So prior to the growing season. So Aquatics construction process. We have an RFP out to hire an owner's rep right now. So that went out yesterday, and it'll be advertised in the paper this week, and we'll be sending it out to the appropriate, there's some businesses that push that stuff out too. So we'll be hitting those up this week. So and then when we get that owner's rep on, we'll be looking at the RFP, RFQ for the engineering and design work, for the pool itself. So we're looking at a design build process to get that work done. The Hendricks Playground replacement. So that is still going to happen in this prior to deep winter. So it's a busy company. A&Z Recreation is contracted to do that for us. And their start date just today got pushed back a little bit further. So they're going to start that project November 28th versus the 14th, which is in your packet. So Ramey Harvey Park improvements. So Kafke got a grant to install 2 new benches. So we just laid that out today where they will be located there. And so that park is getting some additional, amenities through a granting process that Kafke was a part of. So they're going to make that kind of bench that they did the 2 benches before that are conversationally laid out, so that's what's going to be happening there. And then 4th Street Plaza Park improvements. We're going to be putting out some public information because we need to remove those Russian elm trees there. Our town arborist has assessed them and they were not planted or planned planting at all. They're taking over the planned and planted trees. And so those are gonna need to be removed. We will let the public know that we are doing that. That'll be December 5th and 6th. And we'll also let the public know why we need to do that. We're also removing the Russian elm that is in the alleyway there to put in our shed, that our replacement shed for the shed we demolished there, so for the project. And so we will have a shed that'll hold all the stuff we need to close that street for special events there in that alley. And that's kind of an update on projects for me, so. December, yeah, first Friday, yeah, so is that the second? Is that the second?
That's the second.
Yeah, yeah,
So the trees coming down will be after the.
yeah, it'll be after, it'll be that next Monday, Tuesday, so. Yeah, and we worked with Carbondale Arts to make sure that didn't mess with anything they have going on there too, so. Yeah, that's about it. We did, the only thing I wanted to tell you about, we did go pull the data from our trail counters up on Red Hill. And so I'll be putting together a report for you guys at the end of the year. We just needed to make sure they were still functioning. So, and they are, we have 4 different data collection points up there on different trails. And so super interesting information comes out of there. And I'll be putting together a whole report for us to look at, hopefully by the next meeting, or maybe on that January meeting, because then we'll have that full year data. But in the 9 months that we collected data to date from that last run, 175,000 passes by
When?
our infrared.
Since when?
Since for the last 9 months. And that's so it's taken the infrared camera or little, things are hitting you on your way up and on your way down. So you have to kind of divide that in too. Right? But that's still 87,000 people. Could be dogs too.
And
So you
dogs.
gotta, yeah, dogs will trip
There's
that.
definitely dogs on that one.
Yeah, so, but so it'll be really interesting to just take a good look at that data over the course of a year and break it down. The software that we did purchase can break it down by days of week, by weekly, monthly, compare each site. Really great software that will give us more data than we ever will know what to do with. So. Yeah, but really interesting stuff. And I'm really happy that they're working when we pulled the data. That was the reason to pull the data, just to make sure they're working. So
Cool.
that's it for me.
I have a question comment. I don't know if it's just from Dia de las Muertos, but there are an increasing number of little solar activated lights on graves at the cemetery on Village there. I don't know if you know about it, or if there's a policy or it's okay.
That's against our policy, and it
Okay.
was a Dia de los Muertos.
So those you think will be coming
So,
down? Okay. Thank you.
But I think it's important to allow that to happen for that.
For a short time
culturally
period. Okay.
for that event. So, yeah, even though it's against our regs.
Okay.
Margaret.
Margaret.
Hi,
Hi, do you have a report for us?
no, not yet.
Okay.
Oh, that was fast.
Margaret's working hard. I can give her a report. She's working hard in her new position, and yeah, I'm happy with her being in that position. So, because she's learned a lot, but she also has that base of knowledge underneath it, so that's really going to benefit her in that position. So.
Awesome.
Nice. Yeah, good.
She's working you hard too then. All right.
Yeah, we've established a Monday staff meeting, and we're just working on getting everybody on the same page. And our short-term goals are just to increase getting assistance for the coordinators. So we're starting to add some assistant positions for coordinators so that they can work on the little details, while the coordinators can work on programming changes and additions and starting to bring in more income and revenue for the facility itself. So that's kind of our short-term goal for what we're working on right now. And then my immediate goals is just to identify all the passwords and codes and change names off of everything that Jesse used to do, which is a lot. So that's what we're working on right now.
A
Cool.
lot of passwords.
Anybody else have anything? We have no November birthdays that I can see.
My dad.
Your dad. Well, happy birthday, Rose's dad. Anybody else have anything?
Oh,
Right. Oh,
sorry. So we're in the process and starting that process of creating a facility design committee made up of anybody interested off this commission. And, some staff, obviously, and citizens, we'll put it out to the citizens too, and some trustee liaisons. So if anybody's interested in, being on the facility design committee for the Aquatic Center, email me.
You're gonna have
Sweet apartment
a
for
limited number?
you, I guess.
We'll see who's interested first, I think representation of citizen, trustees, Parks and Rec Commission staff is kind of our four-pronged committee members. So and then we'll have to try to balance that out.
do you have any idea what what's involved with that, Eric?
There'll be not a lot, and it'll be not a lot and then a lot. I mean, so I don't know how else to say it. So
Right.
when we get, architects on board, and when we start to provide them with information out of our planning process, and then the stuff that we've learned since our planning process that we might need, there's gonna be some meetings in there that'll be very, very important, and some in that design process, I think will, be quite a few meetings, just to make sure, that we have our hand in that process. So
Did you say this is design build?
that's what we're looking at. Yep. So, getting a firm that can handle that piece of it, so. Have the contractor construction side, but also the team built for the building. I mean, the architectural side too, mechanical and engineering.
Sorry, I have one more thing. Turkey trot. I need volunteers. If we have any volunteers, please
What time?
let me know. We would need you, the police want to have a talk with the volunteers first, because we are doing several street closures for it this year. And so you would, I haven't met with the police department for that, but the event itself, probably volunteers get there at 8:30, and then the race starts at 9:30. And so we would need volunteers to be just out on the street telling people where to turn.
About what time would it end, or would you be?
We figure the last racer came in, it's an hour and 10 minutes is the longest one, so
Okay.
you wouldn't be out there for more than an hour.
Okay.
Hour and 20, if you're at the last turn, it's at Colorado and 7th, so.
And make a motion to adjourn.
Is there a second? All in favor? Before these guys can come up with anything